Brian is the founder and managing director of Asia Capital Markets Institute. He is one of the 6 instructors on Asia's first fintech MOOC on edX, and has recently been appointed adjunct associate professor and founding executive director to Hong Kong U's Interdisciplinary Law, Innovation, Technology, and Entrepreneurship program. Brian is also a contributing author to the upcoming The RegTech book on AI responsibility. So let's have Brian.
Thank you so very much for that, and thank you very much, Anna, for the kind invitation to speak here. So in so many ways, I'm kind of an outlier. So I actually am from law school, so I'm a lawyer by training. So by way of, you'll notice I've also modified the presentation title a little bit. So I think it used to be called FinTech Teaching, but I think really reflective of what we've been discussing this morning, it's really about learning, right? So it's not just a top-down, but from the bottom up. And then secondly, I thought, especially since we're talking about the experiential aspects, I would touch upon a little bit more about the LIGHT program that I've been engaged at Hong Kong U and share a little bit about that as well. So by way of background, I'm trained as a lawyer. I started my first law degree in Australia, then I moved to New York, where I worked in private practice in New York as well as in Silicon Valley during the dot-com period. My background is corporate finance, so ECM, DCM, M&A. And then I got recruited by Credit Suisse in Hong Kong, again covering the investment banking business. So we were doing IPOs, so CCB, ICBC, PICC, Glencore, Rusal. I worked on all of those. And then I left there a few years ago, bitten by the startup bug. So from there, I set up ACMI. Some of the work actually started in the edtech space, which is why the MOOC elements is of great interest. But also the other 3 areas that we focus on firstly, what I call online capital marketplaces. So it used to be fundraising in stock markets, but now it's fundraising online. So whether it's equity crowdfunding, P2P, or I didn't look for it, but it found me crypto. Secondly, it's in terms of RegTech. So FinTech has grown tremendously. Oh, thank you. So with the idea behind RegTech is, I call it the secret sauce, that big financial institutions, FinTechs as well as crypto are using to use for compliance purposes, for AML and KYC purposes. And last but not least is, as was mentioned, in terms of AI governance. So as a lot of large financial institutions and multinationals are incorporating AI into their systems, what governance processes are they incorporating into their platforms? So earlier this year, well, I had known Doug Arner over the law school for a while, and as you may know, strangely it may seem, Hong Kong law is very innovative in terms of the fintech space and actually had been driving it. So I was invited to join their fintech course. So who knows much about MOOCs? Okay, who's been involved in MOOCs? Okay, so I'll go basic then, right? So the concept of MOOCs has been around and coined since 2008. And in fact, at the time that it was coined, there were 2 modalities, if you like. So one of them really, what they kind of call connectivist MOOCs, are really about online platforms using different ways in which parties can communicate peer-to-peer. So whether through blogs or wikis or social media, such that it's learning if somebody were to post something, you could communicate online from a network point of view. Following from that, X-MOOCs became more prevalent, to be honest, and that really is talking about, as was talked about at the very first session, video recording. So how in these days, traditionally, you have the professor out here, and then I'm limited by my impact in terms of the number of people here. So if I count, my impact is not so great, right? But frankly, as you get into the YouTube generation, for those of you who have got kids, or binge on Netflix, you just put it on and you just keep it going. Or in the US, and less so here, podcasts. You can just listen on your way to work, and you can learn along the way. So those are pre-recorded learnings with quizzes and tests or other assessments, and very often a professor kind of telling sage, well, that was the expression, right? Stage on the stage, still telling you what the learnings are. So the idea is that how can we meld those modalities and pedagogies to be more impactful in this new generation of learning. So you'd be familiar of different MOOC platforms. There's what I kind of call, university MOOC platforms. So those are universities finding new business models, to be honest, and finding new ways to do brand raising, but also outreaching and, again, different business models, because they do charge, some of them, including some very well-known ones. And then the industry MOOC. So whether you call it lifelong learning or executive training or skills-based learning, people in the workplace are saying, I need these skills. Okay, I can sign up for a part-time master's program, but that's a big time and cost expense. If I can just learn it online, that's all I need. Sometimes I want micro accreditation, or I get a full accreditation, but maybe that's all I need. So there are business models around that, and there was a vindication when, for example, LinkedIn bought Lynda. So LinkedIn, which I presume a lot of you are members of, now will be offering online learning with micro-credentials. So with that, do you need to go back to university? I don't know, right? So two of the big names in terms of MOOCs are Coursera and edX. I believe CUHK is aligned with Coursera, with Hong Kong U is aligned with edX. Again, no right or wrong. Started off by big name organizations in the US that really were thinking about growing learning and scaling. Again, very much of a Silicon Valley model. How do you scale it, right? How do you make sure you have greater impact for more people? And there's a democratizing aspect as well. So it's not just the rich people who are rich with rich parents or the really smart ones that can get scholarships to go to these places, but how can others also benefit? So with my son, we sat in on a Harvard computer science course together, right? So anybody can do it, and it's free. So now, FinTech, very sexy name. Right now, I think CUHK has got a few master's courses that are in that space as well. If you look for FinTech online courses, there are quite a few of them around the world. So these are some of the ones listed by Singapore, so there's a slight Singapore bias. But for us, more interestingly, these were the targets that we were looking at. So again, wearing a business hat, what kind of business models might the business schools of the future look towards? So MIT introduced in 2016 a 12-week course, which charged $2,600 US to join. And a lot of the people say, what are the main benefits? It was networking and credentials. This was how they structured, and in fact, some of the supporters of a terminology that you had heard from earlier on with Professor Liu. It's like, performance coaches. We are tutors. It's tech support, right? But what they had to present at the end of the day was a FinTech business plan. At the end of the day, it was a business plan production course. But the back end, a lot of that was run by a South African company called Get Smarter, right? So the following year, Oxford introduced a 10-week course for £2,500. So again, a lot of the responses were that networking credentials, what a lot of people wanted out of that, with lots of guest speakers, and then again, terminology that Professor Liu was talking about, like facilitator, success manager, right, and global success team. So it's very much not professor, not lecturer, right? It's a really different mindset. So whereas for us, I think in Hong Kong U, and I was not involved at the very, very beginning, but so that was launched this year. It's a much shorter, it's 6 weeks course, and it's predominantly a traditional edX type model. So it's free, or if you want the credential, you pay $99 US, you do the quizzes, and you get the certificate, right? So there were 6 of us instructors with quite a few guest lecturers that came in to contribute as well as an industry showcase. So again, so the funding, and it was primarily done in-house. So these were done by professional, if you like, providers who got, I presume, a revenue share in relation to the outcomes. This was done internally, so Tedley is an internal Hong Kong U production house, which I'm sure you all have as well here in CUHK. So briefly, it was spearheaded primarily by Doug Arner, who's a law professor. There was another law professor that was involved, which was from University of New South Wales. But really, the rest of the faculty were from industry. So whether it's Hui who's a former MD of Citibank, and then like me, midlife crisising, going and leaving and setting up not just a fintech, but also then an educational arm. In his case, it's called CFTE, so it's a Center for Finance, Technologies and Entrepreneurship, and so he also is an adjunct in Oxford. Henry Aslinian, who is quite well known in the space here, so he works at PwC, and you'll see his videos. He's very active and very present. Janos was trained as a lawyer and then was doing a PhD with Doug, and in the meantime, on the side of his PhD, he set up Supercharger, which is a fintech accelerator, which has done very well here in Hong Kong, partnered with Standard Chartered and Fidelity last year, and has now set up also in Malaysia. And then myself, so again, my background was in law and finance and then fintech, but again, we are the ones that are seeing the changes in traditional finance and how that is changing. But importantly also, they pulled in industry partners, whether it's Microsoft or Thomson Reuters, now called Refinitiv, Supercharger, and also part of the ecosystem, which is the FinTech Association here. So it really was and is Asia's first FinTech MOOC. There are 6 modules, of which they are listed above, and really the idea, it's an introduction. So if you think about it, fintech is very new. What a lot of us find, especially working in industry, is that there are not enough students from university understand it well enough. There are quite a few people in industry, but they need to understand the terminology and the transition. So how do they readily get that information? And so I think the balancing act with this was, how do we present the information in an engaging manner, but still be good enough for people to understand, because it is meant to be introductory and perhaps to want to learn more. So again, the KPIs, if you like, or the learning outcomes are really more on the introductory level. And I'll give you some statistics later on in terms of the learners and the like. So here I have, so since you all are not, don't have a MOOC background, who's done a MOOC before? Oh, nobody, okay. So this is really newbies. That's okay. So let's see. So this is the website for. So I'll go even one back. So this is edX. With edX, you can choose all of these things. So let's say just now I was talking about data science. You can go and do data science at all of these universities, right? All for free, right? So in our case, so this is the website for the MOOC here. So I will sign in, and hopefully I'll remember my password. So in this case, it's courses at edX. Again, here we go. Okay, so then you can go in, and so this is and this is how the courses are outlined. So the 6 modules that I mentioned earlier on, you start with the welcome. I thought this is kind of interesting. They have a nice little page to see where you're from, and this is to orientate you. These are where all the other students are around the world. I'll give you the more solid statistics. Well, so can you guess how many students how many learners, this is the terminology again, terminology, right? How many learners do you think we've impacted to date? So we started in March. So how many learners? 10,000, well, 1,000 more or less. 5,000? 10,000? 15? 20? 25? 30,000 so far, right? So to me, I don't know about you, but as an instructor, as a teacher, I like the fact that I'm outreaching and impacting that many, right? So that's a feel for it. And then you basically go through the different modules. Now, some of the modules, so there's the welcome, as was mentioned earlier. So what you do have is you do have the video, you do have videos, and then you have polling, right? So videos would be, dare I say it, a little bit like, so this is the introduction by Doug Arner.
Welcome. My name is Douglas Arner, and this is an introduction to FinTech. I am the Kerry Holdings Professor in Law at the University of Hong Kong, and I have spent the past 25 years studying the interaction between finance, technology, and regulation. And in this course, we are going to provide you an introduction to...
Okay, so the point is that there is still a talking head element, right? So which some people like, some people don't like. I specifically told my team that I don't, if you don't have me on the face, it's quite okay. So there is, again, because you're all relatively new to this, so you've got the module, then it ends with a so-called quick check, right? So the quick check is in essence a quick quiz to check that people are not just binge watching one after the other. So they actually do have to answer various quizzes. Now, to be honest, one criticism is that, so this is not made to fail anybody, okay? It's just made, in my view, to make sure that they are awake and actually have listened, rather than just listened in the background while they're doing something else, right? So the idea, and some might say that the touch is not as high as you might otherwise like it to be. So of the different modules, maybe let me touch upon, okay, so they're different, so let me highlight a few different elements. So, okay, so I did this, so I'll show me a little bit. Okay, so the idea here is that, there is, so this is where you end up working with the back end quite
During
a bit.
the past few years, alternative...
So there's the graphics element, right?
In his 2014 letter to JP Morgan
And I'm doing it at 1.5
Jamie Dimon
speed,
famously
okay?
issued a warning to its shareholders, employees, and even traditional competitors. Silicon Valley is coming. At the bank's investor day, he
So
added
for
more
me as
colorfully,
the instructor,
"When I go to Silicon Valley, they all
wrote
want to eat
the
our lunch.
script.
Every single one of them is
I
very
even
trying."
gave direction,
During the past few years, alternative finance is slowly
suggestions for how
transforming
the
the offering of
graphics
financial
can and
services
should be
and the
made.
providers of such services in
On the
two
back
main
end
ways:
side, they look
new
for
business models
copyright-free
and new technologies.
graphics to
It's
actually
critical to
put
understand
up,
the four
right?
key and interrelated technologies
So
that have allowed
how much
alternative finance
can
to
or
flourish.
should I do
These
in
can be
terms
known
of
as the
directing
ABCDs
of the
driving fintech,
background?
namely
It really
artificial
depends on
intelligence
the
or AI,
individuals
blockchain,
and the budget.
cloud computing,
right?
and data. Let's deal with each of them in reverse order.
So again,
Banks, for the
as was
longest time,
stated
have
earlier
relied
on, a
upon
lot
and
of it is
generated a
on
tremendous amount of
storytelling,
information.
right? So
These include information
visuals,
from
so that
and about
hopefully
customers,
it is
their identity,
appealing
their
for the
transactions,
students
their net
who are
worth,
actually looking
and
at
even
it.
their relationships
And
with
as I said, personally, I said,
a lot of this
if
has
you
been
don't have
gathered
me on
by
the
using
picture,
paper
I'm
forms
quite
filled by
okay.
customers and bank
Right?
staff, and not easily
Because
searchable
I
or
wanted to
manipulated for
avoid
analysis.
that
The digitization of information from paper
talking
to
head
data,
issue.
from physical pulp to digital ones and zeros.
So this is just a feel for some of the production value, shall we say, and that's what I think the Tele team is quite proud of in terms of how engaging is it. Because as you all know, with e-learning, I can have that camera pointing at me the whole time, and then you upload it, hey, online learning, right? But this is different levels of engagement. How do you keep the students engaged and the like? So just briefly to walk through a couple of other elements. So they are, so one of the things that is done is we also have industry showcases. So with industry showcases, the idea here is to actually invite industry participants to present. The balancing act is such that they are speaking in a generally interesting manner, but not be just selling their product, right? Fine line, but important. So here, so in this case, certain questions
well, I think
were posed to the
regulators are
industry
looking
members,
at technologies and startups
and
such
then
as
they were
language,
talking
to look
to
at
and about
to be able to introduce new technologies and new ideas faster into the industry. In particular,
again, we do have a whole series of these industry experts that have been, what in this case we call industry showcases. Now the last section really, I guess the word case study is used, but in this audience I'm almost embarrassed to use that phrase, right? Because it really is very highlight introductory, right? So really it is in the case study that you all will learn and love. But it really is talking, and actually a better example of sorts would be, so there's Resolute. So in FinTech, there are lots of different kinds of cases that can and are being used. But to talk to one of the earlier points is you really want to hear about, local names, right? Names that you know and hear, so that people are willing and able to identify with them. And so in this case, there's the attempt to try to have big names,
in this
as
session,
well as,
we will look at the case study of
less well-known
Alibaba
names.
has already been mentioned several times in the course, for example, in the modules about mobile money,
And
evolution of
so,
payments,
so
and also
for those
alternative
that are
finance.
into instructional design and pedagogy, there's an argument that 5 minutes, 6 minutes is too long. So if I were fully designing it, I would cut it in 3 minutes, right? So, but you have debates about these the same way as case study approaches. What is the optimal length, right, that these should be? And so there again, but I did want to highlight to you that I think case studies is important, at least again, as with your approach, to try to make it real and authentic for the students as well. So briefly, that's the nature of the course, and I'm able and willing to share more details with anyone with further questions. Now, statistics. I think this is kind of interesting. So we have learners in 190. So these are statistics that I'm one of the course administrators. So I did screen captures before this presentation. So we're in 198 countries, of which 18% come from Hong Kong. 13, I think, from the US, and then there's India, 8%. So interesting, right? That being said, our budget is not large. So some of us used to laugh whenever you look at Google search, especially if you look at the space. Some of the bigger shops like Oxford and MIT kept going higher in the search rankings. We didn't have budget for all that high kind of rankings for search engines. So for the budget that we are at, we're quite happy with some of these results. Again, learner medium age is 32, right? 25% are 25 and younger. Then you've got 50, and then 50% at 26 to 40, and 25 for 41 and above. So again, if you think about our subject matter, which is fintech, kind of interesting. So there is a lot of senior executives want to learn more about this, but how much time and effort are they willing and able to devote to it? I've actually met at least 2 or 3 people now who say, Brian, firstly, I'm getting used to Professor Tang, I saw you I did your course and they want to take pictures. But they also did the Oxford and they also did the MIT ones, right? And so it's really interesting to see why and how they're doing these. And a lot of people are trying to career transition into this new and exciting space. Next, we have backgrounds. So 14% are high school and lower. Interesting. 42% are college, and 42% again are advanced degree. So again, from a statistics point of view, perhaps you may say because it's fintech, it's understandable that they're more sophisticated kind of audience. But it's interesting that this medium allows us to outreach to those that might otherwise not have access to this. Now the MOOC was launched on, again, looking at time-based statistics, right? The MOOC was launched on May the 15th, so you expect that big bump. And then again, we did not have the active marketing budget. So again, we would love to have a marketing budget, and then we can see, okay, we did a marketing push there on Google, and to see whether or not there's a bump in terms of how effective the marketing is. But so those are the stats in terms of, now there's watching, and this is one of the interesting things / challenges of MOOCs, right? So you've got the active learner, then those that watch the video, which tends to be, of course, the highest, right? Watching videos are easy, that have tried the problem, so that's even lower, and then participated in discussions, which is the near flat line, right? And I'll get to that shortly, okay? So this is, again, to me, interesting to statistics from a pedagogical point of view is, okay, obviously video is engaging, but how do you ensure that you try to, so rather than just passive, I'm just listening and watching the video, how do I engage, and what is an effective modality in which of engaging? And then importantly, the participation in discussions to the extent that you can do that. And right now, yes, we are at 33,000 enrollments. So from that point of view, it is again, as I mentioned, very rewarding as an instructor. But another interesting but very common MOOC statistic. So lots of people start, not so many people finish, right? So again, it is one of these challenges that MOOCs frankly do have. How do you ensure, and how do we know why it is the case? Maybe it wasn't as exciting, maybe they didn't think that was what they signed up to. But frankly, these stats are completely consistent, if not slightly better, than traditional MOOC statistics. And that is one of the challenges. So rest assured, I think instructors will always have a role, right? Linked to that also, when you look at the quiz, so the quizzes petered out towards the end, but for those that did finish the quizzes, but there is a decrease, right? But it does peter out towards the end in terms of those that did do the conclusion quiz. So briefly, again, these are the case studies that were actually utilized. But to be honest, as I mentioned, they were like maximum like about 6 minutes case study, and I said it was too long, remember, right? But again, from a pedagogical point of view, ideally it should have been cut into 3 or 3, and there are different ways in which to do it. But these are not the case studies that you might otherwise think about. In fact, Crystal and I were just talking offline just now about how we can actually use an online platform to be more engaging for case studies. So I think the technology is potentially there to make more interesting case studies. And in fact, some of my ideas, and I want to talk to you later on, is using sensors for alternative data collection, right? For some of your future case studies. So now, has this been a success? So from lots of different perspectives, those stakeholders would say yes, it has been. So we've reached 33,000 learners in 198 countries, in every country in the world. So at one stage, Doug was going around saying, anybody who knows anyone in Togo, ask them to sign up. Togo was the only country we didn't have. And then we had Togo, then we were fine, right? So now we can say every country in the world, right? So learners include policymakers. So we've had, Regina Ip saying how she signed up to learn about fintech. And she even proudly showed her certificate on LinkedIn, right? But from a university point of view, we're now also launching a fintech professional certificate. So, and it truly shows that it's interdisciplinary. So, Introduction to Fintech was really run by law school. We also now have a fintech ethics and risks being run by business and economic school. And then we've got blockchain and fintech, which is run by faculty of engineering. So, all of these are meant to come out by May of next year. Some of them may be starting even earlier. So the idea is that as a success from a university point of view, it's been a great experiment in that way, and a way for outreach, and universities like the branding, of course, right, in relation to fintech. Now, in terms of industry involvement, again, as I mentioned, a lot of them were instructors from industry. And I noted with interest that, except for our keynote, today most of the speakers were adjuncts, right, or postdocs, right? Because for better, for worse, and this is something I'm learning now, within the university, research has got the highest status, teaching, right? And so therefore, so I'll leave that to you to draw your own conclusions. But so you've got adjuncts coming in, which is interesting because we have the industry experience, and one of the reasons I took up my new role is because I find that one of the things that industry finds is we don't have enough of the talent, the relevant talent and training. The people that are coming up don't have the skills that we want for hiring. So what can we do to improve that? Industry showcases are important, which includes startups as well as established vendors, if you like Microsoft and TR. And then little short case studies. And as you see on the right-hand side, so those are where the industry instructors came from. These are my own reflections in terms of how perhaps this could be done better for the next iteration. And I'm in ongoing discussions with those that run it to see whether and to what extent we can do it. Now, a lot of them relates to funding, to be honest. So the first is firm interactivity. So as I mentioned earlier on, our message boards were not really well participated in. And you can say there are lots of reasons for that. But linked to that also is because, for example, the MIT and the Oxford ones, they positively encourage you to be on for discussions, because there's a lot of classmates from all over the world. But to do that, as you all know, you need people to curate it. You need, tutors, you need postdocs and teaching assistants to run that. There was no funding for that, right? So to be honest, the curation can and should be better, but it depends on what your learning outcomes are. And so, to be honest, in my view, the forum interactivity can be done much more, but really it involves resources. Secondly, in terms of community learning. So one of the things we've had some big corporates that have bought over a whole stack of the courses for their employees to learn. But one of their senior managers came to me and said, Brian, but I'm not going to name the name of the bank, right? So big bank X has got a whole bunch of modules free for the employees to come together and learn, but they tend to get certificates, but they can't get enough employees to do that. So what I've recommended to them is to have brown board lunch viewings. So you host a little lunch, bring your own lunch, and we'll just watch it over lunch, right? So because even busy executives can't find the time to do that. So that's one way in which you can have community learning and can build a community around that, even within the corporate. Another is the blended learning approach. And again, I'm a big fan of blended learning. When I set up ACMI, that was one of its theses. So the model here would be kind of a reading club model, whereby all of you tonight, you all go watch it. Next week, this time, we'll get together and we'll discuss what we learned in Module 1. What questions and what outcomes and the like, right? So then it becomes more of a, again, this is much more peer-to-peer, but this is a way that the community can engage with one another and learn from one another rather than just be passive in terms of learning. And then last but not least, something I've suggested, and I think we'll be taking up in the first quarter of next year, is an alumni meetup. So we have all these, as I said, 18% of the 33,000 are from Hong Kong. So, and a lot of the instructors are actually based here. So why don't we actually have meetups where we can actually, you can meet with the professors/instructors, right? And meet with others who have learned it as well and build a community around it. And as you grow that alumni community, you can even have industry showcases of the local industries so that it becomes real and more authentic as a learning experience. Now I briefly want to touch upon how I got brought back into academia. So for the past few years, I've been invited by business schools, although I had joked earlier on, not CUHK, but UST, HKU, City, and Poly, not CUHK yet, to talk to the business schools to basically scare them. You all want to join investment banks. I was an investment bank, right? Think again, fintech is going to change everything, right? And then I got invited to the law school, say, you all want to join big law. Think again, AI and blockchain is going to change it all, right? And so I was invited to various initiatives there, including, I've liaised with David Donald over at the law school here. So earlier this year, I organized Hong Kong's first, so the mention was made earlier on about hackathons, right? So earlier this year, I learned about this thing called the Global Legal Hackathon. I said, it's wonderful. I've been in fintech now for a few years, and these are very, very common. Now, finally, it's coming to the law. So who's organizing it? And nobody was organizing it. So I said, fine, I'll organize it. So I organized Hong Kong's first legal tech and fintech hackathon. So the appeal there of sorts was to have, if you think about it, lawyers and compliance folk sitting next to technologists and then creating a product over a weekend, right? So again, as was discussed earlier on, pedagogically, you get a whole group together. In this case, a lot of them had not met each other before. They form teams, and then they learn to, and then they ideate and prototype. They create, again, like business schools. A lot of business schools students are not technology orientated, but they get to sit next to technologists, whether it's computer science students or actually people who are working from IT companies, and they build something over a weekend, including chatbots and the like, and then they pitch. So I'm short of time, so I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but long and the short is that during the pitching session, a Hong Kong team was selected. You'll be pleased to know that half of them were from of the team of 9, half of them were from were law school students. Of the law school students, half are from HKU, half are from CUHK. They made it to the finals in New York, and I helped them get funding, and they won in New York, right? So the thing is, there is talent here in Hong Kong. And then I got involved in the Computational Law and Blockchain Festival. Again, this is run more out of Stanford and MIT. And how do we grow that here in Hong Kong? So Hong Kong Law Society had organized hackathons, which we supported and then I was invited by Hong Kong U Law School to say, Brian, would you be interested in spearheading a new initiative? And we like acronyms. So again, coming back to Professor Chan's comment about have an acronym. So I came up with LIGHT. So it's Law, Innovation, Technology, and Entrepreneurship. The ideas we can it's meant to focus on innovation, new ways of doing things. It's interdisciplinary. That's the other reason why I took it on. So I'm liaising with the engineering faculty as well as the business faculty, but we're also with architecture and even medical school, because law and technology permeates it all. How can we bring it together? It's experiential learning, so linked to what was said earlier on, we're looking at whether it's called clinics or it's internships, and entrepreneurship. So the hope and intent is we're going to be supporting Hong Kong U student entrepreneurs and maybe beyond in terms of cyberport and the like. So it's right now, Hong Kong U has launched a couple of BA-SC courses, a new Bachelor of Arts and Science courses, and the light course will actually be in the FinTech BA-SC, and the Design Plus. FinTech is led by is led by the Computer Science and the Business School, and then the Design Plus is led by the Architecture School. But we're going to be incorporating our course into that as well. And we've already supported hackathons, talks, again, the importance of, as was discussed earlier on, we had WeBank and TNG come and speak to us and our students, and I'm supporting the launch of a blockchain and crypto club as well, student-led club. So again, to me, agency and authenticity that was mentioned earlier on is so important. If the students have an interest and a passion, we want to be able to support them. And we're doing interesting things like I've got an AI-based autonomous driving platform in partnership with the computer science department based on an MIT platform called DuckyTown. And we're also supporting things like Alibaba's Jumpstarter and the like as well. So this is really an extension I thought worth mentioning in light of this context. So here, a lot has been talked about in terms of experiential learning and agency of the students. We're bringing it one step further. If you invite me back next year, I can share more in terms of how it has gone. But we're learning, we're curating, we're looking at what is being done elsewhere around the world and then modifying it for Hong Kong purposes as well. But ours is quite unique still, because compared to elsewhere, where a lot of law schools are doing some of these projects, we're specifically doing it at an interdisciplinary level. And some of it is well, a lot of it is undergrad. So how do you introduce that in an undergraduate level where, as was mentioned earlier on, they may not appreciate the experiential aspects as much as possible? So I'm here, I spent the whole day here to learn as well, and thank you very much for the invitation to share. And welcome any questions. Thank you.
Again, thanks so much. In fact, Brian has hit a lot of important issues in his talk. Notice that MOOC is a very hot learning technology nowadays, and also case study. And also he raises issues that actually it involves collaborations between different departments. Finance, business school, law, and also engineering, etc., and also inter-university, which actually Hong Kong U's MOOC project is the first one in Asia, and it involves a lot of resources, people, and collaborations, etc. And Brian's has actually given us a very brilliant introduction. I hope all of you enjoy his talk. Do you have any questions? Do we have any people from finance? It's a bit pity that we don't have finance people here. But never mind. As you know, that actually we also should learn all of this.
I think that's a question.
You have some question. One of our speakers, Keith Wong.
So thank you, Brian. I actually came in to the second half of the presentation. Probably I missed something. First of all, I should have joined some of your courses. Otherwise, I wouldn't have lost half of my investment in cryptocurrencies.
There you go.
So I should have found out about this earlier on. No, my question, because I was a case writer a long time ago, that I'll be sharing in the next session. I'm wondering, one of the key issues for case, because case will be most suitable for a real engaging class. You need an instructor to direct the traffic. And of course, by saying that, it doesn't mean that it cannot be applied to an online or mock conditions. But as you presented the drop of the participation, and you also mentioned about forums. Have you ever thought of building in some of these elements of interactions into the case when the case was being crafted? I don't know if you have ever thought of that.
Thank you very much for the question. I guess, okay, so for the Hong Kong U one, what I would say is this. So I describe myself as coming from industry. So I'm learning about how universities work right now, right? Including different departments and different faculty. And so this one has been, the good news is that there has been a good and strong interdisciplinary approach from even before I joined. So I won't comment on the Hong Kong U initiative. But what I will say to you is this. So when I set up ACMI, the original target audience, again, there isn't anyone here from finance, but if you're from finance, you know the CFA, right? So the CFA is a certification for the buy side. But if you think about it, there's really nothing for the sell side. So the idea was, for me, I mean, I worked in New York and the Valley before moving to Hong Kong. I don't pretend to tell New York and London what to do, but I think for Asia, because we in Hong Kong have legitimately been top in IPOs and capital markets, we can say we have good standards here, right? So the idea was to set up a platform for the sell side, but in particular targeting the China market. So because a lot of my bankers were all flying up and down all the time. So, 4 years ago, I was looking at cloud strategies to do onshore China before Ali Cloud was around, and Azure and AWS couldn't do that, right? So a little bit ahead of its time. But linked to that was also, then came the 2015 dip. And so therefore, the liberalization in China slowed down, shall we say. So I joke with some, when you go into startup world, you learn to love the word pivot. That's how I pivoted more into the fintech space. But I have thought about that. And again, and now am re-engaging in that space. So the idea is, I think you need to think about how many people and where you want to impact, and where you want, and how big your learners are. I'm still surprised, to be honest, when I hear about the sizes of some of the masters and other classes. Surprised in the sense of, there's a lot of work and effort that goes into these classes, and then how many students do you have, right? So now, but it's meant to be a very impactful experience, and as we know about leverage, the more students you have, the less you're able to spend time with. So what is the most, again, coming from PE side and VC, how can you better scale? So what kind of models of scaling? So there are modalities around, if you have enough TAs, or frankly, there are chatbot models now, right, to actually scale, whereby there are some quite famous computer science courses whereby at the very beginning, they had an online program plus questions are asked of the TA, and it was only at the very end of the class that the professor revealed to the students that the TA is actually a chatbot. So, and the question is how many students actually knew that? So there are ways, dare I say it, to actually address some of those aspects, right? But I think that's why I'm a big fan of blended learning. I think there are ways to do offline, online. The logistics get more complicated when you do a cross-border. But if we do some of the ideas that I've been suggesting, which is more, where you can control a little bit better if it's within the community. So whether within a particular corporate environment, whereby again, if you're at big bank, I have lots of auditoriums that I can get employees to come around for viewings, or flat P2P type models, or otherwise meetup type models. There are ways that these can be done. But as you know, if you're looking more at, again, depends on whether you're looking at executive education or you're looking at master's programs. So I think you have a lot of master's programs here. The students are so busy, right? The only free time they have is like Friday nights and Saturdays and Sundays, and that's when a lot of you might have to teach, right? But I take my hats off to the master's program who have to do the homework plus the work and the like. So I think it does, from a design point of view, you need to think about who you want to target, how you target, but I definitely believe that there are modalities around that. Happy to chat more offline. Thank you. Anyone else?
As a teacher,
yes.
Hello, Professor. I think I am a bit involved in this finance because I used to be a stress in the sales side. Yeah, the stress, the math plus computer science. And I graduated from CUHK EE. My question is, this is by far, I think, the first fintech course in MOOC in Asia.
Yes.
And will you keep it free all the time? Because if this is free, I think I'm going to watch this video tonight.
Number one, you can go and watch this video now, right? No problem. So number two, I suspect that it is. So there are those who are interested in business models. Some big school universities are saying, okay, what's the upside of the university doing this, right? So why would a big brand name university do this? Because then students might otherwise, I don't have to attend. And if it costs $99, hey, that's nothing, right? That's a night out for you, right? So now, and which is why some universities have tried the other business models, right? So again, I don't know all the details, but it's been said that anecdotally, some comments have been made that the quality of some of the students here have not been as high because people are buying the credential. So they say they've done it, and I went to, I did an MIT kind of thing, right? But to be honest, their engagement and all that is not as great because, to be honest, the selection criteria is just whether you'll pay for it, right? Is that a good, from a university strategy, is that really what you want to do? Is that brand dilutive, right, if you want to think from a strategy point of view? My suspicion is we will continue on with it. So as I said, we will actually have three courses being introduced in the next by May of next year. The three courses will be on. So whether one from business school and the other one from engineering school, right? So yes, we will be doing it, and I believe it'll be on the same basis. In other words, it'll be effectively free or $99 if you want to have that piece of paper. And some people are putting it on LinkedIn, and some people are not, right? Depending on what your own credentials are. My take is that, so I was recently speaking to Doug, for that 6-week course, a lot of work went into it in the background. So whether it's the original filming, I had to stand in front of a green screen, right, with a teleprompter and all this kind of stuff, right? So, and then somebody had to do post-production work, right? And then you had to curate the questions, and then we have Moodles, Word doodles, and like. So there are different ways to engage the students. So there's a lot of back-end investment as well into it. But I think ultimately a lot of universities see it as partly a branding exercise. Although, I'm not at liberty to share any numbers, but if even on $99, I think it was okay, right? Business-wise, it was okay.
It's almost free.
Right, exactly, right? Effectively, no, but from a university point of view, there was a rate of return. There was a rate of return where that was concerned. So I think this will be a trend, but it'll be a trend to a certain extent because, okay, now that we've got the branding, the idea behind is now, this is just me speaking in my own personal capacity because I'm only an adjunct. The Hong Kong U will say, okay, right now we're coming out with fintech courses, which if you want this caliber of stuff but in greater detail, come and join our master's program. Right? So if you think about it from a business plan point of view, why does it make sense and the like? Okay.
And then my second question is, for the first course, Introduction to FinTech, is taught by Faculty of Law. I'm quite surprised it's taught by Faculty of Law because I think maybe a Faculty of Engineering or Business is better. Would you put a lot of importance on programming? I mean, because I know for FinTech, for stress, programming and real-time coding is very important.
So great question. So this is how I explain it. So again, I was in the Valley, and then I was in-house at an investment bank. So the thing is this. So if you think about traditional startups, that was all engineering, right? If you think about finance, it's business, right? And finance faculty. But when you think about fintech, having the two come together is not so easy. So again, I joke that I feel sometimes like a disruptor because I'm not from campus, right? I'm not from academia. So so what had happened, at least in Hong Kong U's point of view, is I've known Doug Arna for quite a long while, and Doug, we knew each other when we were. His primary interest is financial regulation, global financial regulation, and I was at Credit Suisse, and we were doing international transactional stuff. So I was an honorary fellow for his institute for quite some time. But then when fintech came about, he started doing the beautiful thing about fintech. So when you're on the West Coast, you break things first, then ask permission later, right? Yeah. In finance, can you do that? I don't think so. You go to jail, or you lose your license if you do that, right? And it's the law that's the difference. So that's why. So he started in terms of fintech research for quite some time. And so that's why, unusually, it may sound, but law became, and he's quite entrepreneurial, and so he started this really based on the basis of some side funding, right? And so so it's very unusual, but it was law that started it, right? But in some ways, it makes sense because now, these days, I spend a lot of time having coffee with people from the engineering faculty and from the business faculty, and understanding and just what I call mapping. Recently I had a coffee with somebody from computer science department and from the business department, and we found out they're teaching similar type courses, but from a different perspective. The course that Crystal was describing, you could imagine that being done from a computer science side, but really more detail in terms of the programming, right? So I'd love to hear, and the data scraping, right, and how you get the data, right? You can see how similar courses can be taught by different faculties, but they may not have met or talked to each other for all these years. Oh, okay. If you see what I mean. As I said, I'm learning a little bit of this coming from outside. So I'm spending a lot of time with having coffee with people to try to pull that together. And that's, in a sense, what Light is doing. So if you see my Light web page, I call it a team because that way it's a I don't have to deal with more technical aspects, but I've got law professors, I've got engineering professors, I've got computer science professors. As I look into data analytics, Hong Kong U, there's a lot of medical professors that are doing really interesting things, right, on the analytical side, right, and they're using machine learning technologies and computer vision technologies to actually learn more, and these are technologies that can be used in other use cases. So, as I said, increasingly, it's hopefully trying to map out what's happening in Hong Kong U in this current context. But also, I'm very, very happy to meet with other universities as well to learn more about what other universities are doing, and hopefully finding ways to collaborate as well.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.